So good evening and good morning and welcome back to the new era of agriculture commodity trade. Welcome to the session 3, day 5 of Commodity Week World 2026 or CWW 26. Just a visual and audio check. Neeraj, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Awesome. So early today, this global marathon opened day 5 by exploring the severe production deficit and policy metrics across Asia and Pacific region. Before tracking the sun to the EMEA theater to dissect the strategic African origin pipeline and European substitution metrics. Now the journey continues westward to the heavyweights of the Western Hemisphere, landing directly inside the supply engine that feed global import pipelines. Welcome to the Pulse's North and South America War Room. The agriculture value chain has crossed a critical threshold. The traditional playbooks are the one that relied on predictable crop cycles, stable trade corridors, and reliable trade alliances have officially expired. Trade is no longer observing cyclical market corrections. Operations are running within a baseline of permanent structural volatility. Over the remainder of this event, this global boardroom is being brought directly to your screens. CWW 26, organized by HnyB Tech Incubation and Know Your Commodity, is presented by AgriGuru Online with a host of partners from across the globe. CWW 26 is moving entirely beyond the delayed data of historical balance sheet and heavily scripted presentation. This is an unscripted, unfiltered war room. The mission is to democratize the high-stake market intelligence, mitigate the systemic risk of information asymmetry, and equip the market participant with the foresight needed to defend margins and ensure equity for producers and consumers alike, irrespective of which part of the world they are. As a reminder, these sessions are beamed live across multiple digital assets on LinkedIn, YouTube, X or Twitter, Facebook, and the event website. Let's take a micro view. While the grain provides human calories and oilseed power the global energy and food transitions, pulses are the critical anchor for global nutrition and protein security. Unlike highly globalized liquid oil or bulk grains, the international pulses market is an intricately tight, specialized trading network where a handful of key origins feed the hyper-concentrated demand centers. The global pulses balance sheet is undergoing a profound structural realignment. With the total demand in excess of 100 million metric tons, we have to find the right origins who can serve this huge increasing demand. Now, this is where it brings us to the America theater, which is rebounding engines and supply relief valve for the world. Here in North America, the pulses narrative is defined by massive scale commercial agriculture infrastructure and distinct capability to generate large exportable surpluses to offset deficits in the Eastern Hemisphere. Let's break down the critical America's pressure point shaping the global market today. Canada is the ultimate global export engine. The global landscape for lentils is entirely dominated by a massive carry, and its supply gut is being seen in multiple parts, including in Canada. This international oversupply continues to heavily suppress the origin price, but with the challenges which we are seeing because of the geopolitical issues and upcoming El Nino, we believe this glut can eventually become a savior for the world. Let's move a little bit further. The yellow peas balance. Again, this is where Canada plays a very important role. While we see the Chana complex or Desi chickpea complex in India is suffering because there is a possibility of El Nino impacting our rabi crop in India, with just 3% of carry stock holding for the chickpea or chana, yellow peas can play a very important role in ensuring the chickpea prices are kept at a balance where the consumer can leverage it. And then the South America for sure. South America is again, though known for its bulk grain, is picking up with Brazil trying to produce black mape for India. And this year we are looking at 300,000 metric tons of black mape, or which is known as urad in India, is being produced. The days of relying on lagging monthly reports to make multi-million-dollar procurement or hedging decisions are over. Navigating this extreme supply side volatility requires elite ground-level foresight. The session will extract that foresight. An elite strike force of the American pulses expert and the policymakers are here. The panel features a very strong policymaker, physical merchants managing deep water export campaign, the macro analyst decoding the real-time adjustment to the international balance sheet, and agriculturists working amidst the environmental and macroeconomic volatility. The mandate for this session remains identical: no script, no filters, pure market intelligence. Welcome to the session 3 of day 5 at Commodity Week World 2026. Let's officially open the Pulses North-South America War Room. And with that, I would request Mr. Bill Ruel, the Deputy Minister of Agriculture at the government of Sichuan. Let me first introduce you. Bill is raised on a mixed grain and livestock farm near Brno. After studying agriculture at the University of Saskatchewan, Bill began his career with Jenica Advanta Seeds, held several roles with the Ministry of Agriculture, Saskatchewan, joining BSF's agriculture marketing team, and later returned to the ministry in senior leadership roles, including Executive Director of Crops and Irrigation Branch and Assistant Deputy Manager for Regulatory and Innovation. In 2018, Bill became the first CEO of Protein Industries Canada, where he remained until his appointment as Deputy Minister of Agriculture for the province of Saskatchewan in August 2024. Bill is the chair of the Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation Board and Agriculture Credit Corporation of Saskatchewan Board, and is on the board of the Saskatchewan Trade and Export Partnership and Global Institute of Food Security. Welcome, Bill. Pleasure to have you, sir.
Great, thank you very much. I guess I'll share my screen and I'll do the presentation, and then we'll get into it.
Please,
thank
sir.
you.
And my apology for not pronouncing Saskatchewan perfectly. we Indians struggle with some complex names. My apologies.
It's very good. It's we say Saskatchewan is easy to draw and hard to say.
All yours, sir. Please.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes. All good.
Okay. Okay, I'll give a bit of a background on maybe Saskatchewan's annual crop production. As you've talked a little bit about the province of Saskatchewan, where I am the Deputy Minister of Agriculture. We're a global leader in agricultural production of commodities. And this past year, the crop year of 2025, which ended, this last production year, we produced almost 42 million metric tons of crop production. And you can see by the graph here, of course, we're somewhat volatile in certain years because of weather conditions, very dry in 2021. But this past year, 2025, 41.2 million metric tons of crop. We've got a goal of producing 45 million metric tons of crop production on an annual basis. And pulses fit very well and are a major crop that we grow in Saskatchewan as well. I'll just touch on our pulse production here in the province of Saskatchewan. That 42 million metric tons of crop production translates to a large portion of lentils. We are the world's largest exporter of lentils and chickpeas. In the province of Saskatchewan, which we have about 40% of Canada's farmland, we're producing 86% of the lentils grown in the country of Canada. We're producing 92% of Canada's chickpeas and 46% of Canada's dry peas. And I think you can get a sense here of the magnitude and the importance of the province of Saskatchewan to the global pulse trade. And we are global leaders in pulse production. I've been in the agriculture sector now, as my biography talked about, is for many years. I know many producers across the province, and the farmers in Saskatchewan are global leaders in pulse production. I think I need to also stress the importance of how we produce the crops that we grow in the province of Saskatchewan. We have farmers here that are highly innovative and are using advanced production technologies, including zero and minimum tillage production, to grow pulse crops in a highly sustainable manner. And they grow them in a crop rotation that includes both cereals and oil seeds. And so the pulses that are produced here in the province of Saskatchewan, very little fertilizer use, very low emissions. Pulse crops are really critically important to the farmers of Saskatchewan because it helps maintain healthy soils and leads to long-term productivity of our agricultural soils. We are right now, it's early June, and farmers are out today planting crops for the 2026 crop season. We've got very good moisture across the province, and we're expecting very good crop of pulse crops and oil seeds and cereals. I just am sharing our seeding intentions right now so that you can get a sense of the volume and magnitude of of the pulse crops that will be intended to plant by farmers. Of course, our main crops are wheat and canola. You can see 5.6 million hectares of wheat farmers intend to seed, and almost 5 million hectares of canola. But I'll focus maybe on lentils and peas so that the audience gets a sense of how important pulse crops are to Saskatchewan crop rotations. 1.4 million hectares of lentils will be planted this spring, and almost 600,000 hectares of peas will be planted this spring. So in addition to the production, Saskatchewan is a major exporter of agri-food products to the world. I'll get to the volume of this later, but we export almost on average $20 billion of products to the world. That's in Canadian dollars, but I'll break that down into volumes because I think that's probably more applicable to the audience. So in 2025, our agri-food exports were almost 32 million metric tons, a major supplier of commodities to the world. In 2025, we exported 17 million metric tons of cereals, 5.7 million metric tons of oil seeds. But I think the audience is probably interested in the amount of pulse crops that we exported. Over 3 million metric tons of pulse crops were exported in 2025. And I'll break that down in terms of pulse crops. We exported 35% of the world's lentils in 2025. We're a top exporter of peas with 33% of the world's exports of peas in 2025. And our lentils and peas carbon footprint are over 100% lower than competitive jurisdictions, which I can talk about. But I think it's important to stress how critical Saskatchewan is to the export market of pulse crops, with lentils at 1.5 million metric tons, peas at 1.3, and chickpeas at 216,000 metric tons. Again, major global exporter of all pulse crops. And just specifically to India, I would like to say in 2025, we exported 725,000 metric tons of pulse crops to India. That's off a high in 2024 of 1.3 million metric tons. And I think conversations like this are so critically important as we talk about Saskatchewan being a strategic partner to India in terms of the volume of pulse crops that we export. One of the things that's, excuse me, one of the things that's happening here in the province of Saskatchewan that we're very excited about, in addition to the production and export of pulse crops, is the value-added processing sector that's emerging. We're home to some of the largest pulse exporting companies in the world, and those companies are starting to create more value-added products, be that pea protein and different fractions of pulse crops. Some companies that you're seeing here that your audience might be familiar with. AGT Foods is located here in Regina, Saskatchewan, where I live and work. In addition to that, we've got a number of companies that are growing and a number of companies that are investing in the province of Saskatchewan doing value-added pulse processing. Louis Dreyfus, Agricor, Simpson Seeds, C-Merrick, P&H Milling Group, and Lovingly Made, all housed here in Saskatchewan. So that's a little bit of kind of the production, the export, and the value-added processing. I'd like to spend just a minute talking about the investments that the province of Saskatchewan makes in research and development. I think it's a critically important point to make, to talk about the importance we place as a government of Saskatchewan on research and development to further grow the pulse sector, ensure that it's highly sustainable, ensure that our farmers have the technology that they need to keep growing so that we can serve export markets like India. In Saskatchewan, we invest $37 million a year directly into agricultural research. A large portion of that goes into the pulse sector. We invest in plant breeding institutions, the Crop Development Center that is responsible for probably over 90% of the pulse crop varieties that are grown in the province. We have a number of scientists that are dedicated directly to the pulse sector, and we invest in production practices and extension to help farmers be more efficient. Specifically in the pulse sector, we fund a number of different researchers that are just solely dedicated to growing the pulse sector here in the province. We've got we fund a breeder that works directly in field pea and soybean breeding, a breeder that works directly in chickpeas and flax and coriander as other crops. We've got a lentil and fava bean breeder. We've got a chair that works directly in pulse pathology. And we also have a scientist, his name is Dr. Michael Nickerson. He's a global leader in protein quality and utilization that helps our value-added companies become more efficient and effective. We've done a number of projects across Canada, working with organizations like Protein Industries Canada on accelerated breeding, making sure that we're advancing to the next stage of pulse production in Canada. And finally, I will make mention of a new initiative that was signed between Canada and India to create a pulse protein center of excellence. At the University of Saskatchewan, which is where we house our major plant breeding institution, we're also creating, in collaboration with India, a pulse protein center of excellence. And this is meant to be collaborative research to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our critically important customer, which is India, with new pulse varieties and new technologies that can meet the next stage of that's required to continue and further the collaboration between Canada and India, and particularly Saskatchewan and India, as we grow this market together. So I'll stop there. I look forward to the conversation, and yeah, thank you.
Awesome, Mr. Bill. It was a pleasure to learn a little bit more of Swan, because I believe, there is a huge potential. India, I saw one of your graph which talks about dip in 2025. One of the reason was that we had imported, because of certain reason, far more than it was required because of various reasons. And in pulses, we have seen this happens regularly, because in India, the pulses inflation can actually have a political impact. So we always like to have availability. So sometime when we see that there could be shortages, we export more than what is required, and then actually it lasts a little bit longer for 4 to 5 months over next year. At the same time, our crop for next year was better than the previous year. So I've already got a question actually from one of our audience. Okay. He's asking that actually what are the initiatives being done between two governments to ensure there could be stable policy regime, and any initiatives which has happened recently, if you want to answer that, sir.
Yes, yeah, thank you for that question. I think one of the things, and I was in India not long ago, and I think one of the issues that we need to think about probably is in terms of tariffs and trade with India on the pulse sector, understanding some of the policy objectives that the Indian government has related to pulse crops. But in Saskatchewan here, farmers are always depending on India as a market. And so we have to be really cognizant of the tariffs that are on pulse crops today. And so that's one of the initiatives that we need to be thinking about. I think the other thing is on the research and development perspective, making sure that our scientists and our farmers in Canada really understand the needs of the Indian market. So anything that we can do to think about long-term trends for what is needed in the Indian market to make sure that we're focusing our research and development in the right areas would be critically important.
Awesome. So no, that's very, I would say, valid point, that right understanding of the market and then actually trying to work around with that. At the same time, I also engage regularly with different stakeholders in India on the policy side of it. And I think we are thankful for Canada for doing whatever they are doing, your farmers specifically, and ensuring our India's nutritional security. Second question to you, Bill, would be when we talk about two critical crops, lentils and yellow peas. And when you see about the tariffs being raised in India, do you see that actually we need a little bit of more structure discussion where there could be a proper MOU signed between India and Canada, where actually, like, this trade issues can be, for once and all, can be codified, right? In case we have production of so and so, right? This is the tariff we are looking at, because end of the day, supporting Indian farmer is also as important. At the same time, also helping the farmers of Canada also have visibility. And luckily, our cycles are different. So when my production, numbers comes before you, so your farmers can at least get an early warning that in this year, India exports could be a little bit of a challenge. Should we look at some alternative crop, or should we not grow as much? So do you think that a little bit more strategic initiative, and not just at the government to government level, but at the government to trade to trade level, can also be achieved?
Yeah, I think what farmers need to see is market certainty. And this is, I think, the challenge that producers have, because we've built pulses into our crop rotations. If I go back to the slide that I talked about, where we've got, oil seeds, cereals, and pulse crops. Pulse crops is a really critical crop in the rotation for Saskatchewan farmers, because it helps with disease management and pest management and weed management and fertilizer use and cost of production. So farmers in Saskatchewan have built pulse crops into their rotation for agronomic reasons, but also for economic reasons. And one of the things I think producers need here in the province is market certainty. And the fluctuations of tariffs in India create uncertainty in the marketplace. And so it might push farmers to, reduce lentils or pea acres, because they might not have a market on the other end, but there will always be a market for canola because we built out crushing capacity. So I think anything that we can do to create better market certainty for the farmers of Saskatchewan, as with India as a market long term, is good for both sides, because it helps with the crop rotation that we've got here, but I think it also helps Saskatchewan be a strategic partner for India in the food security needs that you have as a country. So market certainty is a really critically important component.
Bill, one more thing, actually, if you see off late for past 2 years, Indian policy has been pretty stable with just increasing tariffs once for lentils and yellow peas. And that too was, lentil was limited to just 10%. And frankly, I observed trade flows, and that has not impacted at all, right? The buying intention. Right, the reduction is because of other costs, not just 10% tariff. In India, 10% tariff doesn't make any difference, because those who eat the masoor, which is your lentils, right, they love the crimson, and they keep on looking at it day in and day out, and they have that affection towards that specific variety. So I think more or less the policy has not been. And believe me, if you see just 2 years back, the policy was all like, changing like, every other day. Right. So I think India has been a little bit more stable. But yes, I think an earlier warning rather than actually like straight away coming with a tariff could have been a better way of handling it. That is my personal view. That is possible. Now, the question to you is that, well, going beyond just the India and Canada trade, we are seeing across the world the geopolitics, the El Nino, and Canada is sitting at a great position, right? Your crop is not going to get as impacted as the rest of the world. How do you see, like, the Canada performing, whether it's wheat, whether it is oilseed, or whether it is pulses going forward? Because when we talk about wheat, believe me, Australia today, like, 3 days back, we had a session on wheat as well. Australia is planting far less. In fact, they are looking at 20-25% lower yields and production. Europe is struggling. US, condition better than me, that 70% of the cultivated area is either at D1, D2, D3, D4 type of drought. So Canada is having, I would say, a great opportunity for the wheat trade. Do you think that the countries which might look at wheat, specifically Middle East and North Africa, there is a good possibility of Canadian exports?
Yes, absolutely. So if I go back to seeding intentions, farmers are just finishing planting now because we're in early June. The seeding intention for wheat is 5.6 million hectares. It's a significant crop. It's the largest volume crop that we produce in Saskatchewan, both durum and non-durum wheat combined. is the largest volume of seeded acres in the province. And of course, Saskatchewan, we've only got 1.4 million people who live here. We export almost 90% of our agricultural production. Wheat for us is a major export crop, and you've talked about it, the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa, large market for us. The US, Japan, China, and other markets. So we're a major exporter of cereal crops as well. And the production looks quite favorable right now. We've got good moisture conditions across most of the province. And, because of the investments we've made in research and development and the innovation that producers and farmers are adopting in their fields, agricultural production, including cereals and pulses, just continues to increase on an annual basis in the province. So yes, I do expect that the 2026 crop will be significant in terms of volume, and that leads to greater exports of pulses and cereals.
And good price also expected. We are seeing some ups and downs on speculation because of frankly, every morning generally previously I used to see the prices, the charts. Now I look at Truth Social, what's coming there more than charts. So world is a different place nowadays. Now last question before we let you go, Bill. How do we see? I've seen the beautiful work your government is doing with having your representative across different embassies of Canada. I've met you in Dubai. I've engaged with your teams in India. I've engaged with your teams even in Africa. So I know that actually you're having a very strong network. How do you augment it further so that you have more engagement with the grassroots trade rather than just the policymakers? Because in some of these markets like India, right, the policies are driven by those from the ground up. And if they are not sanitized, right, the top will generally not move. Do you have any plans of engaging more with the trade community and those actually who are executing their business?
Yeah, I think that's really critically important for us. And I do think that it's a question of time. And so, about 5 years ago, Saskatchewan embarked on a new trade strategy with the creation of 9 international trade offices, one being, of course, in India. And our managing director, Scott Matthews, has been in India now for a number of years. And he has taken time to build those relationships. I think it starts, as you've suggested, maybe at the government-to-government level and at the policy level. But because Scott is living and working in India full-time, he's creating new connections and new relationships with people on the ground. And so we have every intention to maintain those international trade offices. Our Premier, the Honourable Scott Moe, and the Minister of Trade and Export Development, the Honourable Warren Keating, and our Minister of Agriculture, the Honourable Dave Merritt, they've all been to India a number of times and will continue to do that. But I think, to your point, it's really critically important that we have people on the ground and that they're building relationships with people in India. So we intend to continue that.
Awesome, Bill. More than happy to help support anywhere if you feel that across Global South. We operate out of India, but extensively cover Middle East, India, as well as Africa. And this is where I believe there could be better traction with the trade. And I think Pulse Canada is also doing a great job.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they were not able to join because of some prior commitments. But I think in future, we'll engage more with them and look forward to have far more pulses coming from Canada to India. And believe me, I love the masoor dal or the lentils which come from Canada. Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to have you, sir.
Great. Have a great rest of your conference. Thank you.
Awesome. So with that, after the policy discussion, it's time to get into a little bit of the trade side of it. And to understand the trade side of it and talk about it, we are having an exceptional professional who understand not just Canadian market, but overall pulses market like back of his hand. So we would be inviting Mr. Deepak Pareek, an AgTrade professional with over 15 years of international experience. in global agriculture commodity sector. He currently serves as Director, Ampros International Canada. In addition, he is a board of director at Canadian Pulses and Special Crop Trade Association, that is CPSC, and holds the prestigious position of chair of the Pulse Atlas Committee at the GPC. A Canadian national with dual master's degree in agriculture science and business management, Deepak brings extensive senior trading expertise gained through leadership roles with global firms such as Hakan Agro. His core strength lies in independently managing global physical and derivative trade book across key agriculture origins, including Canada, Australia, and Black Sea region and Brazil. With deep market knowledge, strong international trade relationships, and broad experience across supply chain and commodity risk management, he has built a solid reputation within the global pulses and agri-commodity industry. Welcome, Deepak bhai. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to everybody.
Perfect. So I'll straight away get into a very important question. How do you see yellow peas and lentils global balance sheet, sir? We already had a good discussion about how the Canada is shaping up with Bill, the Deputy Minister of Saskatchewan province, and would like to understand a little bit from you. How do you see these two commodities faring globally?
Let me start with the yellow peas, sir, first. So when we talk about yellow peas, definitely there are supplies. There are stocks available at the origins, and so supply is there. Now the bigger question is, where is the demand, and how much is the demand? Because when you talk about the balance sheet of yellow peas, we are expecting almost 1 million tons of short production in yellow peas in Canada. Ukraine will be about 50 to 70,000 tons less in yellow peas. Russia will be more or less close to 5 million tons. So when we see these are the three big producers and exporters, so when we see the balance sheet, I think the stocks are reducing. The supplies will be less, going forward. Now, the bigger question is, where is the demand and how much demand we can foresee here? So let's say if the numbers are somewhere close to 300, because we are not too far from 300 levels now. If the numbers are closer to 300 levels or a little below, then I think it will kick the consumption as well as the demand will increase drastically. When it comes to Canada, I think you've heard already. I don't want to specify too much on that, but here the farmers are very reserved when it comes to selling at lower numbers. Russia, there are many issues this year, like strengthening ruble. Then the second thing is the export duty on Russia. These are the 2 points where the Russian farmers are also not too keen, on selling at a lower price, because they are always comparing yellow peas with wheat, where they say the FOB today at 12.5 wheat is about 245, 250. So if yellow peas goes below wheat, there is no incentive for the farmer there. Ukraine, I was just speaking to somebody today in the morning, a grower in Ukraine, and they were talking about a crop of 50 to 60,000 tons less, something close to 500,000 tons. But they are very happy to participate in European corridor. So, where they are having better margins, and the transit is also very short. So Deepak bhai, what we need to see here is, of course, there is something called on paper, and there is something what is realistic. So on paper, it looks like, there are enough supplies available, there are too much of cargo available, the demand is missing. But who wants to sell at these numbers? Are these only speculators or traders, or is it the origin are supporting these numbers? So in short, what I want to conclude on yellow peas is that what I can see from a supply side, it is moving towards a more balanced or maybe, a little tighter balance sheet going forward in next few months. This is how I look at the yellow pea side. When you talk about lentils, again, I will just specify more on reds, because I think we more are interested in reds. So definitely Canada, when we talk about the production of Canada, although we planted more acreage this year, but because of the expected lower yields compared to last year, we expect the production to be more or less closer to last year levels, about 1.8, 1.85 million tons. So which is not huge, which is basically in line with last year numbers. Now, what has changed this year is, Australia. So when you look at Australia in totality, they're also coming closer to the same numbers, like 1.9 versus 2 million or 2.1 million. They're not too far. So when we look at these two big origins, they are more or less at the same levels. On the other side, Black Sea, because Kazakh and Russia, they have been producing close to about 700 to 800,000 tons of red lentils in the last 2-3 years. So what I'm hearing is Russia might reduce the acreage a little bit on red lentils. So where there might be a little bit of cushion coming from Russia, because Russia is supplying to basically Middle East and Turkey, Middle East, those destinations. So this is supply side. We are comfortable right now. But look at the numbers. A number of 550, 540, these are almost the floor levels for red lentils. So we don't see too much of downside here from the supply side. Now coming back to the demand side, what we see in terms of demand and what will be different this year? I think India will be more or less at a similar number, about more than 1 million tons of red lentils. But Turkey could little bit, change the momentum this year, because they will have a better crop. The red lentils crop will be over by about 150,000 tons. This year, they're projecting about 252 to 275,000 tons of red lentils crop. So if they have a bigger crop by 150,000 tons, so they will buy less this year. So that is the only shift. But when you look at, there are lots of ifs and buts. Right now, it's a more balanced balance sheet. And going forward, I don't see too much happening here, at least in the next 2-3 months or the near future. But when we look at, the Indian scenario, for example, there is too much of talk right now about the monsoon deficient rains or possible El Nino impact. I don't know too much about that. Even I'm not a speculator on weather, but what I can say is if little bit of that happens, then there is a big upside, even in lentils. So then it will be from a, supply comfortable balance sheet towards a more tighter balance sheet. If that does not happen, then it will be a pretty, where it will be a very range bound. So there it will be completely in balance.
Perfect. So, Deepak, one more actually critical aspect, like, you have dissected this whole thing pretty well. So one point is that rain is gonna be a problem for sure,
Yes.
right? I sit in India, and fortunately, I've been analyzing the patterns of weather for past 6 months, because I was the first one who said that, El Nino is gonna come, right? Whether we like it, and that the market was always questioning that it's a fear mongering, it is too early. But see, you have to see that, some sign, right, gives you a gut feeling, right, based on your experience, that what is going to happen. Scientifically, right, we can always deal in probability. So it started from 28%, 38%. When it was 28%, I said it is bound to come. Only thing which I missed, right, was that its enormity, right? That was difficult to predict at that time. This is gonna be enormous, right? IMD is saying 10% deficit long-term average. Now that's scary. That's scary for very simple sense is that overall moisture is gonna go down. Forget about like geospatial spread and timeline. Overall moisture would be less. That means Rabi pulses, there is a challenge. Second, even the geospatially, if you see that, people were talking June would be great. July would be okay. August is the problem. I'm sitting on 5th of June and already there is panic. Instead of 28th of May, we are already talking about 5th. Today, somebody said it might hit today. I've not seen, because I was involved in the sessions, I have not seen the data for today. But if it has not even hit today, just think about shifting of Kharif sowing for multiple crops, including the pulses. So I think India would be having a serious shortage going forward. And again, the intention is not to put fear, but intention is to update the market that please grab whatever you are getting today. Don't wait for tomorrow, because tomorrow may never come. Secondly, generally people see it as just like a monsoon phenomena. That is a misunderstanding about El Nino. El Nino just don't impact you just for 3 months or 6 months. El Nino impact you for a longer duration. And the type of El Nino we are seeing, it is not just this season. So Kharif, Rabi, upcoming Kharif again, you will have serious challenges. So again, it is 18-month phenomena. And on top of it, we add the geopolitics, right? That's another problem. The freight rates are high. the currency volatility is there. So all of that means that actually we'll be having choppy time. Now, based on what I said and your understanding, how a trader like you, right, who is building books across multiple geography, right, mitigate the risk? You are having exposure in multiple economies, multiple origins, multiple destinations. How you are able to ensure your risk is minimal? Because I think next 2 years, only those people would do well who mitigate risk, not those who make or try to make more money. That's my view. I can be wrong, but that is what my view is.
So Deepak bhai, as you rightly said, when I was learning management, the first lesson which I was told or taught by somebody of my senior was, once you understand the risk in your business, you become a trader. So I 100% endorse what you said. Risk is the most important aspect. Coming back to your question, how to mitigate these risks? Unfortunately, we do not have a mechanism of hedging on exchanges, unlike we have in grains like soya, corn, barley, those type of products. So we don't have that hedging mechanism. But what we do is, as a trader, what one should do is, we have multiple origins today. You have reds coming from Russia, you have reds coming from Canada, you have reds coming from Australia. Of course, like not all trade flows are same. And you don't have 100% correlation. When you want to, sometimes there is a big disparity or divergence between Australian or Canadian prices, or even Russian or Canadian prices. So a trader has to have multiple positions. First, they have to understand, they have to have that, okay, for example, if they're short at some place, for example, if I believe, okay, there is a huge production in Australia, I'm just giving you, wild example, just for somebody to understand. If somebody feels, oh, there is a good supply, there is not too much of, logistical issue or container issue or freight part, even the transit is less, then I should go long there because there is a availability of cargo and I can keep on getting that cargo. But somewhere, if they feel that no, I cannot do that, they cannot just short. So short only where you are comfortable of getting the supplies and you have lesser risk. So what happens is, personally in my case, because we trade with multiple origins, multiple geographies, so somewhere we are long, somewhere we are short. And we also do track business in Canada, we also do DCT business in Australia, so which are domestic trades. So you eliminate basically the the freight or the logistics component there. So currency, of course, currency is also one of them, which you can always hedge. So for example, people in India can always hedge a rupee, or in structured countries, you always have a mechanism to hedge your currency. Logistics, you can't do much. But you by having multiple positions and different types of positions, somewhere you're short by something. So for example, if I'm short by 4,000 tons and if I'm long by 3,000 tons at some other place, I'm mitigating my risk, because see, red lentils is red lentils. At least they have the same direction. If one origin is going too high, then other origin cannot go down. It might not go relatively with the same speed, but it will also follow the same direction. So this is how one has to do it. Same goes with yellow peas, because yellow peas also, we have multiple origins, multiple destinations, like what China is doing. Again, different sectors in China. You have fractionation, you have this one, feed sector. We have starch industry. India is basically a different market for basically only human consumption. Then you have Ukraine also supplies only for feed. So it has to have, like, okay, what is the feed value? What do you compare with the protein valuations of feed manufacturers, because when it goes to feed, so you have to have knowledge of that. And you have to see, for example, if corn is growing, if corn is going up, or if soya is going up, yellow peas cannot left behind, because wherever there is a feed usage. So one should have an understanding and awareness of all these things, what correlates where. And by going somewhere long, by going somewhere short, and you should understand like what risk you are taking. For example, containers, I don't think anybody understands container business too well in terms of whether there will be a GRI or not. So one should take limited risk, but by positioning yourself in different markets in a different by long or short, you can little bit hedge. I would not say we have 100%, but at least 75 to 80% you can still hedge your positions, and you can minimize the risk of these things.
Perfect. Very well articulated, sir. Actually, like, your senior was pretty right in explaining management terms to you. And because I think today it become more relevant than ever when we see the chaos all around. That brings me to another very pertinent question. Like, according to what are the leading indicators that suggest that the current price relationship between yellow peas and lentils represent a permanent structural shift rather than the temporary trends? Because people are talking about, like, will we see the same level upside or downside? What I strongly believe is that with China in the play, India looking at a deficit, I think, like, the bullish overall bullishness in overall pulses basket coming out of Canada and from Black Sea looks a little bit structural rather than actually a temporary blip where actually you might see a little bit of upside. And that I think, like, for next 2 years, this feature remains there. Do you agree with that, or are you seeing the shoots there of that thought process?
I 100% agree with you when you say about the structural changes. Now, what happens, Deepak bhai, for example, like feed. I mean, if we go back, like, when we talk in India, we don't talk about a concept called feed usage for yellow peas, right? Now, it's not only feed. Now, the whole industry is, yellow peas is now finding new usages. It's not merely going only for food consumption. Let's say, when, as we see in Southeast Asia, not China. China has a very diversified industry in different usage. But look at United States now. They are experimenting it with in pet food. They are experimenting it within snacks industry, the pea protein powder. They are experimenting it in this animal feed. Now these are some of the new usages. So if we see a product only from one point of view, that okay, like let's say, okay, for example, if India's demand is less or China's demand is less for the human consumption, so then people will not grow this, or this will not the prices will fall. No. So this basically coincides with your thought process of structural changes. Now what challenges do we have? Like, we are finding new avenues for it, but the productions are not increasing in line with that. Because if you see, more than me, when you look at 10 years down the line, so for example, if this becomes a very successful ingredient for pet food sector, for example, now pet food sector alone in US is close to $30 billion industry today. So and who knows, tomorrow there could be people go from here to the other industry. So structural changes are definitely happening. When it comes to the substitutions, or how can it can affect this, I believe yellow peas is gonna be the yellow peas will be staying. The question is, what is the production today? How do we see the production growing or decreasing next 5 years time? I would say there is a big challenge that you cannot increase the production of yellow peas to the tune of the consumption what we are seeing today. Because everywhere we are facing, every country is going through the weather anomalies. Then every country is the farmers are sometimes not happy with the prices, so they're not increasing. They're not just shifting. Let's say farmers will just leave the canola fields and just go for completely yellow peas. No, that's not happening, sir. So that shift is not happening. They will be, the farmers will keep on growing, be it lentils, be it yellow peas, and there are more usages coming in. Now, the thing was that before it was only 5 to 10%. For example, when you go to the pea protein market, it was very, just saturated with a couple of, derived from animal proteins and other things. But now you see the pea protein, the organic concept, this concept. So there is definitely a structural change, and I believe both products are different. Both products will stay there. What we are talking today, we will still talk the same discussion. We can also have the same discussions 5 years down the line. Now, since the population is increasing, now the demand will be there. But can we supply to that magnitude? Can we grow the crop to that side? I don't think so. So they will stay. We will have challenges on supply side going forward. Now, structural changes, yes, it's more about structural things, whether India brings in duty or India does not bring in duty. Like, does Canadian farmers drop their acreage by 50%? No. they still go for it because they have usage. So basically, coming back to your point, yes, I agree with you that it's more structural than the policy and the supply demand side of it.
Deepak bhai, one more important question actually, because you touched upon the feed. See, for markets like India, generally, like, yellow peas was seen as a very costly feed, right? Now, what we are seeing in the soya meal, right, it touching 65,000 rupees per ton sort of environment. Suddenly, peas become an option because yes, peas having half of the protein which soya meal is having. But if I add, right, it as an extract, right, my price is actually 20-25% cheaper than it comes to soya meal. So I think those type of things are gonna happen as well, and even the markets like India will start, at least for animal husbandry. Right, I'm talking about the milk cows and buffaloes. There is a possibility, there is a market there. So maybe if not for human consumption, there is a possibility of, like, the feed market picking. And this year, I think feed is gonna be a big problem. Your views on how do we change the perception of traders and give them the alternative, because across the world the yellow peas is being used as feed, right? Unfortunately, India has not been doing that, but there is a humongous possibility. Do you think that, and I think feed grade yellow peas would be substantially cheaper than actually the food grade, so that also makes this economics viable even for getting yellow peas as a feed to India? Do you agree with that?
So Deepakji, coming to the same point, I was talking to yesterday. I was talking to a Turkish feed manufacturer. Now, when we talk about Turkey, we think that's a big re-export hub because they buy a lot of goods from different origins and then they manufacture the feed and then they export it to different countries. Now, this guy, when I was talking to the miller, and he was telling me, look, Deepak, I'm buying wheat today, corn today, barley today, sorghum. All these are feed ingredients, basically. So then he started buying yellow peas. He says, I get about 11%, 12% of protein from wheat, but the cost is almost similar to the value of yellow peas today. And peas offer about 22 to 25% of protein. So when you look at it, you're getting more protein at the same value. So what he started doing is he started using more pea in his composition, or that the combination of feed he was producing. So there now, only this Turkey is consuming, because of course it's a big re-export hub. They're importing close to between 500 to 600,000 tons of yellow peas. How many people know that? So it's a new thing which is happening, as you said. So definitely for the feed manufacturers, human consumption is there. There is no doubt about it. But apart from human consumption, it's a very good substitute for a lot of other, feed ingredients, because yellow peas, in terms of price, I don't know how do they manage it, but currently with the level of the prices, they are more or less at the similar level of, wheat. So for example, if wheat is offered around 300 levels today, SIF, yellow peas is also at the similar level. So today you're getting more protein for a substitution where you have more protein from the same product. So that feed industry, I don't know only about India, but globally, if you look at it, they're preferring peas now, and that is one of the reason why they are. So this has an increasing usage also. More protein, same value. On the other side, Deepak bhai, as you said, look at the values. I don't know. I'm in this industry for last 15 years. Let's talk about the prices of pulses. How many times have you seen prices of peas around 500 levels in last 10 to 15 years? Don't you think these are at the more or less at the bottom levels? Same goes for red lentils. You talk about red lentils, a level of 520 to 550, they also look on the lower level. A price of desi chickpeas around 550 is also, because we have seen highs of 950 in desi chickpeas. We have seen highs of 600 in yellow peas. We have seen highs of even 1200 in red lentils. So when you compare the historical data where the prices have been, they're more or less at the bottom level. Because see, if we try to reduce the, I don't know about the demand, but if we try to push the farmers, then what will happen? They will not grow, because they are not making the more margins compared to what they were getting before. Or let's say in Canada, canola is a more profitable crop than, or more cash crop than growing yellow peas. So what will happen? We need these products. So we cannot push even the growers or the suppliers or the origins that, no, you have to reduce the price. No, that's not going to happen. The thing is, we have to find ways. We need to be innovative in terms of finding more usage. We need to be more rationalized in terms of price ideas. As you said, like, a soya price of 65 rupees. It's not normal. It's abnormal, especially when you're getting into a supply phase. You're expecting your own crop in next 3 months' time. So this is an abnormality, right? And we are talking today, we are discussing, because of the higher price, we are discussing a substitution of soya bean by yellow peas, isn't it? So we need to have, so these are all structural things, sir. These are all structural changes. We are not just limited to only supply, demand, and consumption side. So these are all what you said is, I'm a big fan of you because, whatever you say, I've seen most of the times I follow you and things happen. And I'm watching very closely and listening to you when you say about El Nino and weather. So I'm going into the same direction when you say, so things look very, very on a grounded level. From there, the downside looks very limited, or probably, so it might be range bound for some time in case of demand is missing for some time, but then there looks to be no downside. There looks to be more upside. Just to give you one more example, this is in the morning, because a lot of people in India is asking about, yellow peas prices, they are dropping, this is happening, that is happening. So I called one of the biggest growers who grows on about 50,000 hectares of land. So he was telling me, look, Deepak, what are you talking about? We don't have only India, we don't have only China, we have Europe, we have many other markets. If people do not want to eat this, no problem. We have animals in Europe. So he was just giving an example that, okay, instead of selling at 300, 310 to India, I would rather sell at 290 to Europe, in Italy and Spain. They consume about more than 1 million tons of feed peas. They import it. They are importing it from Ukraine. So you say my freight differential, as you said, I said a lower, a smaller transit. The freight differential about $40. Why should I lose $20 by selling to India? Well, if Indian prices are lower, then we will not participate in Indian business. They're very clear. And he is one of the largest one. So, what you are saying, I'm just, complimenting, and I'm just coming to the same points that market, I'm not saying market is bullish and bearish. It does not look nice, or it thinks like, too premature as a trader to, forecast something. But the downside looks to be very limited or hardly any. There is more upside. And if these two elephants, especially India and China, if they come with their regular demand, I'm not saying even excessive demand, even if they come with a regular demand, believe me, you have seen, sir, the type of mad rush we have seen in these countries. If India jumps, you see even yellow peas prices jumping by $50 to $70 a ton in a matter of days, right? So this is...
No, I totally agree with you. In fact, 15 or 20 days back, I've written a post saying that buy whatever pulses you can, right? This is where, as you rightly said, bottom is not this is bottom, frankly, $5 or $10 here or there, I don't care. But yes, maybe traders might care, but upside is huge, right? A possibility of upside is huge, and the downside is very limited. And that is, I believe, that is what a smart trader thinks about, right? When you take your risk calculation, what is the upside potential and what is the downside potential? Downside potential, frankly, maybe I could be blinded, but I don't see any downside potential, right? There could be a downside correction because of currency, because of freight, and multiple factors about it. But overall, I think we are in a bullish territory. I'm not a trader, so I can take that call. I can say that I look at all pulses to be bullish for sure. And as was initially you were not there, I said that high availability or so-called glut in Canada, right, which has kept things range bound, is blessing in disguise, who is able to get hold of that commodity today, because it will get you maybe not dollars, but something equivalent to dollar going forward. Thank you, Deepak. It was a pleasure to have you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So now we go from trade to the real aspect, what even Deepak was talking about, proteins. And this is where we'll like to invite our next speaker, Nicole Atchison. She's a PhD, a prominent climate tech executive, and CEO of Puris, North America's largest manufacturer of pea protein and a leader in plant-based nutrition. Holding a background in chemical and biomedical engineering, she directs a closed-loop food system integrating seed genetics, advanced processing, and product innovation. Her expertise focuses on scaling sustainable manufacturing solutions, promoting non-GMO agriculture, and serving on major national boards to advance global plant protein supply chains and human health. Welcome, Nicole. Pleasure to have you, ma'am.
Great to be here. What a great conversation so far. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome, awesome. Looking forward, same with you, with your expertise. Frankly, the type of work you are doing is commendable, and always a big fan of yours. So my first question to you is that what are the primary engineering and operational hurdles in scaling a completely closed loop manufacturing system for pea protein at a commercial levels? Because end of the day, good product is something which consumer buy and is affordable to him. Over to you, Nicole.
Yeah. Well, I think the last conversation, Deepak had some really good insights, and some of the things that we've struggled with over the years is this shift from pulses and yellow peas specifically being thought as more of a commodity to moving them in the value added processing sector. And to do that really means that you have to create these products that people are buying at the store and eating. And so fast forward to today, the market that we're serving is a lot different than a lot of the conversations that we've been having. We're focused on, high touch innovation with food manufacturers making cereals and beverages and things that are sold, in retail at Costco in North America or, stores across all over the world. And it's not as simple as just making an ingredient. It's really, there's a lot of food science and technology involved about making the right ingredient that works. And we've seen that challenge in businesses that have tried to go after the space and not had success. And we always say, a pea protein isn't a pea protein isn't a pea protein. It's all labeled the same, but they're all vastly different. And I think that's the that's the journey that the industry is on right now, is we're scaling, and there's a lot of demand right now for pulse-based ingredients. When you look at market sectors in the United States, at least, a lot of food retail has been flat. But in those sectors, the products that are using pulse proteins, primarily pea protein, are up 15% or more year over year in unit volumes, not just price. And so there's a lot of trends with GLP-1s, weight management efforts, and just general overall wellness to increase protein. And so pulse proteins have a huge role to play here, and I'm really excited for pulse proteins to be a part of this puzzle of where the pulse supply is going to go, and how do we actually get farmers, how do we pay farmers a little bit more so they will actually grow it? Well, the best way to do that is to add more value to the product and create a more valuable supply chain overall. And I really think that's what the ingredients are doing. Now, in order to do that, it takes big manufacturing and operations infrastructure. And so there's a lot that has been invested in the United States, and now globally. China's a big manufacturer of pulse ingredients as well, and there's a lot more manufacturing going up. I think the challenge is not, can you stand up a plant to make pea ingredients or pulse ingredients? There's a lot of technology providers who have process flows and equipment that you can stand up and put together. What we have really seen is the challenges is, how do you run these products the same day after day after day, with the plant running at maximum efficiency, reducing downtime, et cetera, while hitting really tricky specifications for all of these different products. If you're putting pea protein into a ready to drink beverage, for example, you need a very specific protein structure in order for that to work. I don't think anyone who has a beverage wants it to come out like pudding, right? You want it to flow, you want it to be more of like a milk consistency. And that all comes down to the protein functionality, and being able to produce that same functionality and specification every time you run that SKU. That's actually the hard part. And I feel like we've been learning a little bit trial by fire over the past 15 years, and have done a pretty good job of perfecting that. And that's where our team is really focused on continuing to innovate on the ingredients and making new and better functionalities and products that can continue to expand where pulse ingredients play in the grocery store. And then from all of that, of course, as we've noted, the protein is about 20 to 25% of the pea. So what happens to the other 75%? So whenever we're scaling these supply chains, it's not just building the protein, it's finding the offtake for all parts of the pea, the 50% of starch. Where's that going? How do we add value to that? How can we make that part of the value chain and not just a byproduct? The fibers and all of the byproducts from cleaning. They all have valuable pieces to it. And between animal feed and pet food, really it's how do you scale all of those supply chains simultaneously? And do so hitting the quality specs day in, day out while running your plant at maximum efficiency. All of those things having to scale together, that complexity is really the dance that makes this more challenging, but also is what is creating the value that demands a higher price point from the buyers and ultimately delivers nutrition on shelf that consumers are willing to pay for.
That's one of the neatest explanation I've heard. So that shows you, like, how top of the game you are on. And believe me, that game is becoming more interesting. So I'll just give you my own example. You talk about, like, GLP-1, 2, right? Obesity is a global problem. Adoption in India has, like, is close to 220 or 230% on quarter-to-quarter basis. A lot of people want protein. Why? Because if you are on that medication, you have to have protein, otherwise, like, disintegrate your own body. So the first nutritionist thing will tell you is that if you are on the medication, please ensure you eat protein. And India is a vegetarian country, so we don't eat lean chicken or fish. We always go back to something which is plant-based protein. And this is what makes it interesting. All the top 10 major wheat flour producer in India, they have come out with protein enhanced flour, which have peas protein as well as bean protein. So this is, I believe, like, from very niche markets, when we used to say that the developed world, people with per capita income of more than $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 per annum, they can only afford it. Now it is coming to a country which is actually 1/6 or 1/7 of that. So I think this is a revolution which is going to pick up, and I think you are in the best seat to leverage it. Now that brings me to my second question. How does the integration of advanced seed genetics directly influence the efficiency, yield, and ultimate margin structure of downstream processing facility? Because that makes the differentiator. You are having a first mover advantage, but rest of the people are going to catch up. You have to be a step ahead. How you are doing that, especially when we talk about with the technology related to seed genetics?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our thesis for our company was always that we would need to be able to create protein using regional production models. So, relying and being able to produce the crop somewhat locally to the processing facility. So for us, that was in the Midwest of the United States, where our company was founded is primarily corn and soybeans, mostly corn, some soybeans, no peas in sight. And so our original, 30 years ago when we started breeding peas was how do we develop peas that are more tolerant to the soils of the Midwest that have high disease rates, wet soils, heavy moisture, very hot periods, really not super conducive for pea genetics at the time. And so through that, we really focused on more heat tolerant peas that could withstand some of these conditions. And what that has opened up is those genetics allow us, one, to expand our pea acreage into non-core areas of production in the United States. So to the comment earlier that, it's going to be difficult to expand pea production, I agree in the current locations. But when we start looking at areas where peas could be a second crop or a winter crop because they have a more temperate environment, then the economics start to change because now they're getting nitrogen and they're getting a cash crop when their land would otherwise be fallow. Is really interesting. And that is especially true in organic production. Organic pea protein is a huge part of our portfolio, really growing area. And organic peas is an area we're really trying to, push and find more acres and more adoption. And we're finding a lot of those in the southern United States where pea production is not even reported because it's not a thing. But that's where we're getting a lot of our acres because they can do it in their counter season to their primary crop, which is primarily going to be organic alfalfa or wheat for their feed operations. So our seed genetics has enabled us to expand our acres into some areas that are not typically known for producing pulses. Secondly, of course, we're focusing on increasing protein production. And we see some challenges coming out of Canada, specifically northern Canada, on protein levels just being really low. And that affects our yield and through our plant. we're extracting the protein from those peas. So the more protein in that inbound material, the better the unit economics for our facility. And we see some really big connections to protein and the weather conditions, soil types, heat accumulation. We see a big advantage by being able to have more peas grown south, and then the genetics can layer on top additional protein potential in that crop. And then, of course, we look at some other things that are less, less probably interesting at the outset, but really important for processing efficiency. We think about the roundness of the peas, we run through equipment.